Late last year, I was reached out to by a French company called HAL Picture. They offered to send me a beta version of their DaVinci Resolve plugins, Diachromie and Diaphanie, in exchange for some feedback. I'm intrigued because with all their marketing materials, these look like serious tools, and they are. But this journey wasn't all smooth sailing. It took me some time to understand the full story behind these plugins, but once I got it, I've come to really enjoy them and the results they can provide for colorists like myself. Now, these plugins aren't for everyone, and I'll talk more about who I think they're best suited to later on. But if you're interested in elevating your grading experience, and potentially you'd like a little discount on them as well, stick around because today we're taking Resolve to the next level. Starting at the beginning, what are these tools? Well, Diachromie is your look development plugin for altering your colors and contrast, while Diaphanie is designed for adding and altering texture in your images. If you want creative looks, Diachromie is your go-to for adjusting contrast and color tone curves, but also altering specific colors through parameters such as density, saturation, and bleaching. The plugin includes a series of really beautiful but not too imposing presets, which you can use as a great starting point, plus a series of monitoring tools which allow you to visualize what's happening to your image with each adjustment. When you're done, you can export your own presets to reuse in the plugin later, or create a LUT to send to your cinematographers and editors. Diaphanie, on the other hand, is all about texture. It's grain, halation, digital diffusion, and something called the spatial equalizer, which sounds like a weapon in a kick-ass sci-fi film, but actually allows you to selectively blur or sharpen parts of your image based on where it sits spatially. When I first saw this, it looked quite unique, but I wondered how useful it would be day to day. However, I've actually come to really love it for slightly reducing the digital sharpness of many modern images without needing to rely on dodgy qualifiers, like I've been known to do, or adjusting mid-detail, which is actually just adding or removing contrast and hoping for the best. Both of these tools are also built with a robust underpinning of math and algorithms rather than being LUT-based like some plugins use. The benefit to this is flexibility and robustness. These plugins aren't simply feeding your image into a predetermined outcome, but instead have a series of highly specific parameters you can dial in. And more on those many parameters a little later on. And while these aren't film emulation plugins per se, they can easily be used to replicate film stocks with all of the tools available to you. I've come to really love the Vision 3 preset in Diachromie, and the grain in Diaphanie is honestly some of my favorite that I've seen so far. I really love how you're able to visualize the grain on a gradient background and also increase the size of the grain in darker parts of the image to more accurately replicate real film. Plus, you can also add digital diffusion filters, similar to plugins like Video Village's Scatter, but under the one plugin, which handles all of your image's texture. In many ways, Diachromie especially takes a lot of cues from the Chromogen module in Baselight, a much more expensive grading system, to act as a look development tool rather than providing a set of general tools to be used for both color correction and grading like Resolve currently does. The benefit here is when you have a specialized tool for a singular purpose, you can create better looks faster because you're not constantly reinventing your look development pipelines from scratch. Okay, I want to briefly touch on my honest thoughts and experience with the plugins before getting to who I think it's for. When I first opened Diachromie, it took me a moment to wrap my head around how many options it provided for adjusting colors alone. The sliders felt never ending, and if you're like me, maybe this is when you start having doubts. My job in commercial video production right now mainly involves me working quickly, and I look for tools which help make my grading more efficient while still being technically sound. This immediately felt like a big challenge to that ethos. But here's where things changed for me, and I decided to make this video. I kept using it, and beyond that, I learned to use it. And as I did, I got better at achieving really beautiful looks in a shorter amount of time that I once would be able to do without it. I started by relying on the presets to give me a solid starting point, and then change specific parameters from there. But over time, I could feel myself automatically reaching for certain adjustments without needing to rely on the presets entirely. Now, these plugins aren't perfect. You'll want to use caching for Diaphanie to get real-time playback, and there have been some minor bugs I've noticed along the way, but I have no doubt it will continue to improve. Already, Diachromie has seen an update this last month, which has increased my playback speeds without caching, and from my chats with the team, they seem committed to adding new features and addressing any bugs. Honestly, it's made me realize that developing plugins is actually a lot harder than it seems. So who are these plugins for? From my perspective, these are professional look development plugins. They're either designed for established working colorists wanting to expand on Resolve's default capabilities, or post houses looking for a competitive edge. As the pricing would suggest, and we'll talk more about that shortly, these are not designed to compete with a simple DCTL nor LUT-based film emulation plugins, which can feel a little more limiting. But of course, Resolve already includes a large set of features which allow you to create beautiful looks. So it might be worth asking why you need to spend the money on a tool which seems to accomplish a lot of similar tasks. I would say for two reasons: speed and control. Speed might seem counterintuitive based on what I said about how many options this plugin has, but in a normal look development pipeline, you could separate these actions out into 10 different nodes, or have them under just 2 nodes with Diachromie for color and Diaphanie for texture. This saves time and also surfaces controls that without seeing them might not be on your radar, especially that spatial equalizer for me. Secondly, control. If you look at Diaphanie, the amount of fine controls for grain alone is borderline psychotic. In version 1.3, which they've just released, they've now added control for anamorphic grain too. So for all you out there trying to match your grain to your squeeze factor, wait no more. And while you may not consistently need or use all of these options, just having them there is a playground of experimentation and ideas, helping you find what works best for your images with minimal effort. Okay, so now we get on to pricing. Howl Picture does offer subscriptions for either monthly, quarterly, or yearly, but as always, I'd suggest if you plan to use something long-term, perpetual is the way to go. And thankfully, it's available here too. But for €1,100 for each plugin, or €1,950 combined as of Feb 2026, it's not a small investment, and that's why I say these plugins aren't for everyone. But thankfully, it does include 2 seats per plugin, and you can simultaneously run older versions of the plugin on the one machine without using more seats. At the same time, if you do want to go ahead and buy them, please let me help you out. Thanks to my friends at Howl Picture, you can get 20% off both plugins. Just use my promo code Quattro20 at checkout. But even if you're not planning to buy them just yet, I still recommend downloading a demo and seeing if this is the way you'd like to grade. I've left a link in the description below. So that's Diachromie and Diaphanie, 2 plugins which I believe elevate Resolve's potential and allow you to create really beautiful looks with minimal effort, while also being highly flexible and technically sound. I didn't start out a believer, but I'm now a convert, as some of my favorite grades ended up coming out of Diachromie and Diaphanie at the end of last year. In fact, I was so upset when my beta license expired because I had to take a grade and recreate it without those plugins. And it not only took me ages, it just wasn't the same either. And maybe that speaks to my own incompetence, but I choose to believe talented people with good tools create even better work. But just like anything, you first need to develop your craft and then find what tools work best for you. This might be it, and maybe it's not, and either way, it's okay. But I'm keen to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, and once again, please use Quattro20 at checkout if you decide to go ahead and purchase it. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.